census, the city must review and make any necessary adjustments to ward boundaries to ensure they have substantially equal populations. It involves making difficult decisions by extremely complicated federal and state jurisprudence in the extent of a political context, of a political process. In an effort to get a jump start on the city manager has reached out to the Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment Office to begin the process, which occurs only every 10 years. The Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment Office is a joint office of the Georgia General Assembly, responsible for providing the General Assembly with redistricting services. The office uses data provided to the state of Georgia by the U.S. Census Bureau for the purpose of redistricting. In addition to providing the technical assistance to redistrict, the office provides an array of maps and up-to-date data reports, which include information on demographics, precincts, and local redistricting. Because the state code does not mandate that cities automatically reapportion after every census, it is important for local governments to understand the constitutional law factors that may require it. Municipal redistricting can be accomplished either through local act of the General Assembly or directly by cities through their home rules powers. The overriding legal principle that triggers the necessity for reapportionment is referred to as one person, one vote, as stated in Baker versus Carr. The principle dictates that in order for every citizen to enjoy his or her equal protection rights under the 14th Amendment, every citizen's vote should be of generally equal mathematical weight. In other words, the voting strength of citizens living in one district should not be greater than the voting strength of the citizens in another, simply because a great deal fewer people in one district enjoy the same amount of representation compared to another more populated district. Based on the census information, the population range of each ward in Forest Park ranges from 3,676 to 4,273, which leaves the deviation percentage at about 7.20% for Ward 1 and a negative 7.78% for Ward 4. Deviation is the technical term utilized to describe the degree to which a plan fails to apportion population evenly among districts. Although districts should ideally be as even as possible, other constraints often make this impossible. From a historical abstract, according to the 2010 census, the population estimate was 18,468. However, recent population estimates that for the 2020 census are at 19,932, a 7.927% increase. With the revised lines as provided by the reapportionment offices, our deviation average is now 0.033%. The population range of the wards is between 3,957 to 4,008. The city manager is recommending that city council closely review the maps as the revisions were done with no political intent in mind. Further, the city manager believes that the city's council's final choice should be based on balancing the population within the respective wards versus waiting until 2023. While we recognize that this process is happening fast, with the new city manager coming on board and no work being done, we reached out to the state as fast as we could. We will do our best to make this as a public process so that all citizens are notified as soon as possible if adopted by the governing body. Okay, Mr. Clark, I see we have some visitors here.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor Butler. We have Brian Knight from the state reapportionment office. Mr. Knight is prepared to present to all of you to summarize the work that has been done thus far and to explain further the process that we went in developing these actual maps. Again, Mayor Butler, we apologize of the delay. This was brought to me when I took this position. And so we wanted to put something in front of the elected body so that we can begin work on this arduous process. And again, Mr. Knight has no political ties to this community. The lines that have been drawn were not based upon anything outside of us trying to balance the lines or balance the wards, if you will, because one of our wards had a 7% was 7% higher than the other. And so what Brian has done is taken a stab at just balancing out what the ward size would be across the city of Forest Park. But Brian is prepared to speak.
Okay, Brian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. Let me first say, whoever wrote your briefing, that was an incredibly well-written briefing, and I'd actually love a copy of it. That's one of the most concise explanations I have heard in about 10 years of doing this. So my sincere appreciation for that briefing.
Thank you.
And the briefing was yeah, it was spot on. You know, and as mentioned, I work for the legislature. We are a nonpartisan, apolitical staff. Our role is strictly as technicians and advisors to the General Assembly, and at the General Assembly's discretion, we assist the counties and the school boards and cities with their redistricting efforts as well. Post the decennial census, we work primarily on the 3 statewide maps, the US Congress, the State Senate, and the State House. Following that exercise, we work on the 159 counties that all have to be required, as well as redistricted, as well as 180 school boards that need to be redistricted. So we're pretty busy for about 3 years, and then we start tapering off and getting ready for the next census. Once the counties and the school boards are done, we turn our attentions to any of the cities that need our assistance. Forest Park came to me a couple weeks ago indicating they'd like help. They received sponsorship from their member. We discussed what the deviations were. As mentioned, you had a high deviation of about 7.2%. And I put together what we in our office call a blind map. And that blind map is simply blind, in this case, indicates that I don't have any ideas or any preconceived plans for the map. My primary goal is to create even distribution of population among the districts, and to, as much as possible, create clear and defined boundaries between those districts, and to keep the what we call the cores of the districts as much intact as possible. That was the map that the blind draft that I put together and sent back over to your manager. We reviewed it briefly, and here we are today. I will, at the council's discretion, I can share my screen to try to address any specific questions we have. Give me one moment here. All right, let's hope I can do this.
If we could just let the record show that Councilman Gutierrez joined the meeting right before this presentation.
Okay.
All right, if I have done that correctly, you should be seeing our redistricting program. This is a program called Maptitude.
I'm sorry, are you able to enlarge it?
It is full screen on my screen. I'm not sure I'm able to make it any bigger on my end.
Is that what we have in our book here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If you hit control and zoom in, you can zoom in like you scroll up like with your thumb. If you have a mouse,
Yes.
hold control and then like if you.
So to bring in the initial plan, I used the existing districts, which in our system was named Forest Park CC Prop 114. And I add the 2020 census data. That'll be the first map that I believe you've been provided that has the existing districts and the associated deviations that go with that. And then so from there, I make a direct copy of that into a new plan called Forest Park Draft 2023. And this is the plan that I'll bring up to discuss. And so we can see here there are the current, the proposed districts are shaded in purple, green, pink, yellow, and blue. You'll see on the screen there are these red outlines. Those are the outlines of the existing districts. So you can sort of see what changes were made. When we start drafting on these maps, we use our base level GIS geography as census block, which is provided by the Bureau at the beginning of every decade. There was one area right through here where a census block changed. That's not unusual. They change routinely. So I made a slight change here to bring this block boundary to a roadway, since the block that had existed here went away. After I made that initial geography change, I began working in District 5 for the sole purpose that District 5 only touches one other district, which is District 4. All the other districts are able to be moved through another district, through an adjacent district, but District 5 can only be moved through District 4. So I brought District 5 into balance and then began working through the rest of the districts, trying to bring them into balance. One of my goals when I draft is to try to create clear and defined boundaries. So anywhere there's like a jut out or a little finger that pops into one district from another, that's frequently somewhere I'll go to try to look for population to clean that up. Also, I should note, the manager provided me with the addresses of all the ward members and the mayor. According to the addresses I was provided, every member is in their district, and the boundary near their district was minimally changed. So again, started in District 5, balanced that out. Well, I started here with the census block change, fixed that. Started in District 5 to balance that out because all it touched was District 4, and then just worked my way up, balancing between the districts. And again, just a way that seemed reasonable. All of the cores of the districts are maintained. So all the main portions of the districts are still there. I tried to work mostly around the edges. And we brought the districts into a deviation of a high of 22 and a low of 29. So that was a very 30,000 foot overview, but that was a basic run up of what I did in this initial draft. I'm happy to try to respond to any questions the council has. Your manager noted, and I will reiterate as well, I don't speak to the political nature of the map. My primary goal is to abide by state or federal, state, and local ordinances. Redistricting is an inherently political activity, but that political activity rests with the elected body, not with me. I'm just a technician.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman James, questions or comments?
So thank you so much for all the hard work that you put into this. I am in favor of these changes being made. It actually looks like the lines are pretty straight. The only opposition that I would have is the timing of when we do the redistricting, because we have a qualifying less than a month maybe away, and then an election in November. I would be opposed to approving this right now.
Thank you. Councilman Antoine.
No comments.
Councilman Gutierrez, questions or comments?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hey everybody, miss you guys. Actually missed my flight actually, so I've been missing today. But I honestly, yeah, I'm very appreciative of Mr. McKnight, to work, and I see everything. But I do have to agree also with Councilwoman James, for the sake of transparency for the district. I don't know, like I'm open to talking to everybody and how y'all feel about it. Or I think when I spoke to the city manager, he mentioned something about this needing to happen, and needed to happen before, but it's happening now. I just want, I'm always, the transparency, and I don't want anybody like saying, oh, they change this so can run or whatever. I don't know, but I'm open to dialogue with this. I also want to avoid any lawsuit from anybody, because that's just gets expensive to the city. And but I hope talk about it. Sorry about the noise, y'all. I'm at the airport.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wells.
Yeah, I mean, I get the timing, but I mean, he just said he don't have nothing to do with the political part. So I think I would trust our city manager and what he says when it's pertaining to this. And if you don't mind, Mr. Clark, because my only question was about the residents not being informed in a timely manner. I'm just one to believe if you're doing your job, you don't have to worry about who's in your district. It is what it is. If it has to be done, then we have to do it. But can you explain to me and to everyone else how you would let the people know, or how we would let the people know that, okay, this is no longer your district and you will have to vote in this area?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. Again, I apologize to this governing body in my 63rd day here. This is one of the tasks that was placed on me. So time is not working in our favor, but I can make a commitment that we will notify every resident in this city of the proposed changes. In addition to that, every resident in the city will also receive a precinct card from Clayton County relative to this change. We are bound by state law relative to our charter. With the timing of this, I'll ask Mr. Williams to further expand on what that timing is, but we'll find a way to notify every resident in the city, even if it requires us to pull a mailer list from the local post office and attach this on the back side of it so that individuals are able to see what their wards are. In addition to that, subsequent to this meeting, we'll make it a priority of our staff to convene a town hall meeting, a forum in which the public can ask questions of staff. Of course, they cannot talk to the reapportionment office, but we'll make a commitment to hold a town hall meeting, bring the community in and show them first, educate them on why we're having to do this, and then allow them an opportunity to see what their ward may be changing. I think the changes are minimal. If you look on the maps, it looked like it just clarified some boundaries, but with me not knowing the streets, I can share with you that was nothing political intended by this, but we'll go the extra mile in ensuring that we inform and educate the residents first as to the process and then as to what their ward will be. I would ask Mr. Williams, because that's one thing we haven't spoke on, is the actual time that we're up against.
So in order to amend the map, you have to amend your charter. And OCGA 3635-3 provides the rules for how you do a charter amendment. And the ordinance would have to be adopted twice at 2 consecutive regular meetings. And then you have to provide a notice in the ad or an ad in a newspaper that will run 3 consecutive weeks prior to final adoption. So that is sort of the minimum. That's the minimum requirement under the statute in order to accomplish a charter amendment. There is time to do that prior to qualifying. Qualifying begins on right now, it begins on August 21st through the 25th. It's technically possible to get all the ads run and to adopt an ordinance on August the 7th and August the 21st. Those would be the 2 consecutive regular meetings. And then we have plenty of time to run the ads prior to that. The only minor adjustment we would have to make is we've currently set qualifying is from 8/21 to 8/25. We would need to amend the qualifying period to only run from that Tuesday through Friday and not the Monday through Friday, because Monday would be the date you took final action on the map. And so you'd, instead of having a 5-day qualifying period, you'd have a 4-day qualifying period. But that would give the prospective candidates enough time to decide whether they're going to run and what ward they have to qualify in. And then you would have all the time from August 21st until election to make sure all the residents were aware. So that would give you whatever that is, about 3 months or so, 2.5, 3 months to notify residents and do the sorts of things that the city manager indicated would be necessary in order to make sure everyone is aware of what ward they would be residing in and, which candidates they could vote for.
One of the things I'll add, the council doesn't have to do this now. However, if we don't take from my office, I didn't want to have the information and not present it. And then this governing body runs the risk of once election gets here, somebody files a constitutional challenge based upon the size of the ward and the deviation that's there. And so we wanted to present it to you with all options on the table so that you guys could make a concerted decision as to how you wish to move forward and any applicable changes that you guys may have to the maps as presented by the State Reapportionment Office.
Thank you. Councilman Mears, any questions or comments?
Well, I appreciate, excuse me, I appreciate you bringing it to us. I think in lieu of the shortness of time to cut down on confusion and anarchy or whatever you want to call it, we need to do this, but we need to do, I think, after this election. Thank you.
So,
I got a question.
hold on, Councilman. Were each members of the governing body notified of the streets that were actually affected, added or deleted from their ward?
So in map number 2, where you see the overlap,
Mhm.
that is the actual street that was affected. Now, we did not go through and individually state the streets because we just felt the maps were good enough, but we can go through there with the State Reapportionment Office and identify the actual streets and make those notifications. We can.
All right, thank you. I am going to call for the vote. Councilwoman James.
I'll make a motion that we.
I had a
do not-
question.
Oh, yes,
sorry.
sir. Councilman Gutierrez.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, if somebody were to run in one of these areas, for example, like, I don't know, I would lose Maple Drive. If somebody runs for Ward 3 that lives on Maple Drive and then ends up winning, and then let's say we do the redistricting of this, we would have to change and go around that area if a person runs for a ward. And then, like, I know this is like a what if scenario, but what if that happens?
I think that's better for the State Reapportionment Office to speak to what happens in the event. Because essentially, if you ran for, if the map was adopted, the timeline that Attorney Williams provided, it would be adopted the Monday before qualifying was to begin or commence on that Tuesday through that Friday. So that wouldn't happen because the map would have already been adopted. The only caveat is if we choose not to do the redistricting now, and then at a later time, go and update the maps just to balance out the size of the ward so that the deviation stays within the average mean.
So if I can, if I'm understanding the question correctly, we, if you are not to move forward at this time, which is council's prerogative, and new members were elected to this council, what I would do at that point is request again from the manager the addresses of council, plot those addresses, and then if any of them were, again, this is a draft map. This is simply a proposal, starting place, a beginning point. I could make adjustments to this map to make sure that no one would be drawn out of their district. We would not want, our office works very hard to make sure no one's drawn out of their office, and so we don't want that to happen. If council were to change for whatever reason, I would ask the manager to bring me back the addresses, and I would redraft the map to make sure that all the sitting incumbents remained in their districts. Does that answer the question?
Councilman Gutierrez, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It's just like, and I know it's no one's fault. It's just like a very touchy time to do this with that. And I'm torn within the, just both sides of it, like just now, the timing of it, but also with not wanting to face potentially like, the 7% deviation question.
All right, well, thank you. You have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my thing, because I know, and I'm trying not to get in the political aspects of it either. But with us knowing that some wards have more people and, they're more populated than others. Just say, for instance, if something happened with my election and I decided to, what was that you said that we can,
File a constitutional challenge.
yeah, what happens in that case?
Well, it depends on the timing. At the end of the day, we've got to show that the wards are balanced. And so, if it's filed prior to the election, that's a whole different set of circumstances we'd have to deal with. Post-election, I think it would be moot because it's my understanding, based on what I hear from the council, that it does intend to, after this election, if they don't do it now, that they will balance the ward. So it won't really matter. Prior to, though, there is a chance that a court would order that you balance the wards. It's possible if a lawsuit came along and alleged the facts that we have in front of us.
The other thing I'd like to add is that the highest deviation is a positive 7.20%. The lowest deviation is a negative 7.78%. And again, this doesn't mean, some of this is also a balancing act because people in the community could have just moved around. Some areas have more apartments than others. Some individuals were counted, that type of thing. But as high as we are over in balancing, we are also even higher with the wards that are beneath the deviation.
And what wards are those?
So for Ward 1, the deviation is 7.20%. So I'll give the population count. So for Ward 1, 4,273 individuals within that ward, which is a deviation of 7.20%. For Ward 2, the population of that ward is 3,994 with a deviation of 0.20%. Ward 3, 3,805 is the population with the deviation of negative 4.54%. Ward 4, the population is 3,676% with the deviation of negative 7.78%. And Ward 5, finally, population of 4,184 with the deviation of 4.97%.
So my point being, if it needs to be balanced, it needs to be balanced. And I'm for balancing it right now. And as long as the public know, it's on public record that we know this and we're deciding not to do anything about it. Because of course I feel some type of way. I'm losing people in my ward that I've known just about all my life that been in Ward 4 all of their life. So it's bittersweet. But at the end of the day, if it's something that needs to be done, it has to be done, and we know that it needs to be done, and we're choosing because it's an election coming up to not do it. If anybody's going to complain, it should be me because I have an election coming up. But we need to do what we need to do to make it right. So I'm opposed to tabling it or whatever it is y'all trying to do.
I am going to call for the vote. You have something you want to add?
What's on the table? Yeah, call for.
Oh, yeah, I was going to call for the motion. Is there a motion to approve the redistricting? Councilwoman James. Oh, no.
You gotta wait for a motion.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry.
So moved.
That was Councilwoman Wells. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, that was Councilman Gutierrez. Any further discussion? Councilwoman James,
No.
Councilman Antoine,
No.
Councilman Gutierrez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Wells.
Yes.
And Councilman Mears.
No.
All right, thank you. Are we having an executive session?
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was Councilwoman James, or a second by Councilman Mears. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Hi, everybody.
Good night.
Is Tanisha still here?